You stepped outside this morning, looked at your feeder, and it was empty. Not just low, on seeds, empty. And you couldn't figure out why. The feeder was full, the water was there. You hadn't changed a thing, but they were gone. Here is what nobody tells you. Birds don't leave randomly. They leave because something in your yard told them to. And most of the time, it is something you've been doing for years, thinking it was fine. Welcome back to The Birds Know. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe, because what you're about to learn will change the way you look at every bird that visits your yard. Today, we're going through 10 of the most common everyday things that are silently driving birds away from your yard, and, in some cases, away forever. These aren't obscure mistakes. These are things most backyard birders do without a second thought. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand your yard through a bird's eyes in a way you never have before. Stay until the very end, because number 10 is the one that hits closest to home, and it is the one most people wish someone had told them sooner. Number 1, your feeder is in the wrong place, and birds know it. This is the mistake almost every new backyard birder makes, and many experienced ones never correct. You put the feeder where you can see it from the kitchen window, from the porch chair, from the living room. That makes perfect sense for you, but the bird doesn't care about your view. What a bird sees when it approaches your feeder is a threat assessment. Before landing, it scans for 3 things: escape routes, nearby cover, and exposure to predators. According to research from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, birds strongly prefer feeders placed within 10 to 12 feet of dense shrubs or tree cover, close enough to fly into instantly if a hawk appears, but not so close that a cat can hide directly underneath. A feeder placed in the middle of an open lawn, visible from every angle, with no cover for 30 feet in any direction, feels like a trap to a bird. They may visit once. They may visit twice out of desperation, but they won't establish your yard as a regular stop. The fix is simple: move the feeder closer to natural cover, or plant a shrub nearby. You don't need to redesign your garden. You just need to think like the bird, not like someone watching from a window. Think about what your yard looks like from above. A bird circling your property sees open space, trees, bushes, and your feeder, and it makes a split-second decision about whether to risk landing. If that feeder sits in the middle of an empty lawn, the bird sees no quick escape route. It sees itself exposed to hawks, cats, and even aggressive blue jays. That is not a feeding station. That is a danger zone. Move your feeder within a few feet of a bush or tree branch. Suddenly, that same bird sees safety, and it will come back again and again. Number 2, you're using the wrong seed and feeding the wrong visitors. Walk into any grocery store in America, and you'll find bags of wild bird seed on the shelf. Most of them contain a mix that looks generous, colorful, varied, full of different grains. Here is the problem. The majority of that mix is milo, red millet, and oats. And the majority of the birds you actually want, cardinals, chickadees, finches, nuthatches, will not eat those seeds. They'll toss them on the ground, or they'll stop coming altogether. What fills those cheap mixes is filler. It is profitable for the manufacturer and completely useless for the bird. The Cornell Lab's Project Feeder Watch, which has tracked feeder preferences across millions of data points, consistently shows that black oil sunflower seed is the single most universally accepted seed among North American backyard birds. Cardinals love it, chickadees depend on it, and even woodpeckers come for it. Safflower seed is the second best investment, especially if you want more cardinals and fewer house sparrows, which tend to avoid it. If you've been using a budget mix and wondering why your yard is quiet, this one change alone can bring birds back within days. Let me explain why this matters so much. When you put out a cheap mix, the birds you want will literally dig through the feeder, tossing aside the milo and oats to find the few sunflower seeds hidden inside. They waste energy doing this, and eventually, they learn that your feeder isn't worth the effort. Meanwhile, the birds you don't want, house sparrows, starlings, cowbirds, will eat anything. They thrive on cheap mix, and they will crowd out the species you actually want to see. So, you have a choice. Keep buying cheap filler and feeding the bullies, or switch to black oil sunflower seed and watch your yard transform. The difference is not subtle. It is dramatic, and it happens fast. Number 3, your feeder is dirty, and you don't realize how dangerous that is. This one is uncomfortable to hear, but it matters. A dirty feeder doesn't just look bad, it kills birds. Wet seed that sits in the bottom of a feeder for more than 2 or 3 days begins to develop mold and bacteria, including aspergillus, a fungal pathogen that causes a fatal respiratory disease in birds called aspergillosis. There is no cure for it. Once a bird contracts it, it almost always dies. Beyond mold, feeders that aren't cleaned regularly accumulate droppings from other birds, which spread diseases like salmonella, trichomoniasis, and mycoplasmal conjunctivitis through the flock that visits your yard. The National Audubon Society recommends cleaning your feeder at minimum every 2 weeks in dry weather and every 3 to 5 days in warm, humid conditions. A simple solution of 9 parts water to 1 part white vinegar, scrubbed thoroughly and rinsed completely, is all you need. Birds are extraordinarily sensitive to the health status of a feeding site. If multiple birds at your feeder show symptoms, fluffed feathers, lethargy, discharge around the eyes, they are sick, and your feeder is the source. Clean it regularly. It is not optional. I know you don't want to hear this. I know you're busy, and cleaning a feeder feels like a chore. But here is the truth. Every time you skip a cleaning, you are rolling the dice with the lives of the birds you claim to love. A single outbreak of salmonella at a dirty feeder can wipe out an entire flock of chickadees in a week. They don't die dramatically. They just get weak, stop coming, and disappear. And you'll never know why. You'll just wonder where all your birds went. Don't let that happen. Clean your feeders. Number 4, you have a cat, or your neighbor does. Stay with me here, because this is one most people don't want to hear. Outdoor cats are the single largest human-related cause of bird death in North America. The American Bird Conservancy estimates that free, ranging domestic cats kill between 1.3 and 4 billion birds in the United States every year. That number is not a typo. Even a well-fed cat, a cat that isn't hunting out of hunger, will stalk, ambush, and kill birds as an instinctive behavior. And it doesn't have to actually make a kill to destroy your yard's reputation. Birds communicate danger, not in the way we do, but through alarm calls, through avoidance behavior, through what researchers call landscape of fear mapping. If a cat regularly patrols your yard, word spreads in the local bird community, and your yard becomes a place birds avoid, even when the cat isn't present. If you have an indoor-outdoor cat, consider keeping it inside during the peak feeding hours of early morning and late afternoon. If your neighbor's cat is the issue, a motion-activated sprinkler placed near your feeder can be a humane deterrent. It doesn't harm the cat, but teaches it to find somewhere else to patrol. This isn't about blaming cat owners. It is about understanding that birds have long memories when it comes to danger, and a yard that smells like a predator is a yard they won't return to. I want to say this gently, but clearly. You can love cats and love birds at the same time. But you cannot pretend that cats and birds can safely share the same outdoor space. Every time your cat goes outside, it enters a world where its instincts take over. And those instincts are devastating to wildlife. Keep your cat inside. Build a catio if you can. But don't tell yourself that your cat is different because the birds don't know the difference. Number 5. Your water source is wrong or missing entirely. What comes next surprises most people because it is not about food at all. In multiple studies on backyard bird habitat, researchers have found that fresh water consistently attracts more species than seed alone. Birds need water for drinking, yes, but more critically, for bathing. A bird that can't bathe regularly loses the structural integrity of its feathers, which affects its ability to fly, regulate temperature, and survive cold nights. The mistake most people make is either not having a water source at all, or having one that has stopped being safe. Bird baths with still, stagnant water breed mosquitoes and bacteria within 48 to 72 hours. A bath that isn't changed every 2 to 3 days is worse than no bath at all. The single best upgrade you can make to attract more birds more consistently is to add a small dripper or wiggler to your bird bath. A device that keeps the water moving. Moving water catches light, makes sound, and is visible and audible to birds flying overhead at distances where a static bath would be completely invisible. Cardinals, in particular, respond strongly to the sound of moving water. In yards, where a dripper was added to an existing bath, birders consistently report a significant increase in cardinal visits within the first week. Change the water, add movement. It costs almost nothing and changes everything. Think about how you find water in your own life. If you were thirsty, would you rather drink from a stagnant puddle or from a fresh, flowing stream? Birds feel exactly the same way. A still bird bath is a puddle. A moving one is a stream. You don't need anything fancy. A $20 dripper from any bird supply store will do the job perfectly. Fill your bath, add the dripper, and watch what happens. Within days, your yard will become a destination. Number 6. Your yard is too loud or too busy. If you've made it this far, the next one is going to change how you think about your own behavior in your yard. Birds are not as bold as they look when they're comfortable. That cardinal sitting on your feeder like he owns the place. He is still running a constant risk calculation. The moment something feels unpredictable, a sudden movement, a door slammed, a dog barking repeatedly, that calculation tips toward leave. Research on human habituation in birds, particularly studies done with urban species, shows that birds can absolutely adapt to a certain baseline level of human activity. They learn your routines. They know when you walk out to get the mail, and they know when the kids leave for school. But unpredictable noise and movement are a different category entirely. Loud music in the yard, power tools, children running suddenly toward the feeder, or even a wind chime placed directly beside the feeding area. All of these register as threat signals. This doesn't mean you have to turn your yard into a silent sanctuary. It means creating a consistent routine around your birds. Go outside at the same times, move quietly near the feeder, and give them 30 minutes of undisturbed time in the morning, which is when they need to feed most urgently before the day's energy demands set in. Birds that trust your yard's rhythms will come back daily. Birds that can never predict your yard will eventually find one they can. I know you love your yard. I know you want to spend time there. Listen to music. Let your kids play. Maybe do some woodworking. And you should. Your yard is yours. But consider this. If you want birds to share it with you, you have to make room for them. That doesn't mean giving up your life. It just means being mindful of when and how you make noise. Maybe you save the lawn mowing for the afternoon. After the morning feeding rush is over. Maybe you put the wind chimes on the far side of the house, away from the feeder. Small changes, big results. Number 7. You've removed the messiness and made your yard useless. American culture values tidy yards, clipped grass, raked leaves, trimmed edges, no dead branches, no brush piles. A perfectly manicured yard, to humans, is a sign of care and pride. To birds, it is a food desert. Dead leaves on the ground are not trash. They are a layered ecosystem of insects, larvae, seeds, and invertebrates that thrushes, robins, and towies depend on entirely. A yard where leaves are raked and disposed of within days of falling has effectively removed an entire food source for ground feeding birds. Dead branches, the ones that look like they should be cut, are prime nesting and foraging sites for woodpeckers, nuthatches, and chickadees. A brush pile in the corner of your yard, which takes 5 minutes to create and 0 maintenance, provides shelter, nesting material, and insect habitat that can support a resident bird population year-round. The National Wildlife Federation certifies yards as official wildlife habitats based largely on 4 things: food sources, water, cover, and places to raise young. A perfectly manicured yard typically fails 3 of those 4. You don't have to let your yard go wild, but leaving one corner unmowed, keeping one dead branch, and letting the leaves sit under the shrubs. These small acts of strategic untidiness are the difference between a yard birds pass through and a yard they choose to live in, especially in January and February, when conditions are hardest and natural food is closest to 0. I understand the urge for a tidy yard. I really do. Your neighbors have nice lawns. The Ho-Oh might send you a letter if things get too wild. But here is what I want you to ask yourself. Do you want a yard that looks good from the street? Or do you want a yard that is alive? Because those 2 things are not always the same. A little mess, a brush pile here, some dead leaves there, is not neglect. It is hospitality. It is an invitation, and the birds will accept it every single time. Number 8. You've been using pesticides and poisoning the food chain. Most people who use pesticides in their gardens aren't trying to hurt birds. They're trying to get rid of aphids, grubs, mosquitoes, the things that damage plants or make the yard unpleasant. But here is what happens downstream. Neonicotinoid pesticides, the most widely used class of insecticides in residential gardening, don't just kill the target insects. They persist in the soil and in plant tissue for months to years. They contaminate the seeds and berries that birds eat directly, and they eliminate the insect populations that birds, especially during nesting season, depend on to feed their young. A study published in the journal Science found that even sublethal exposure to neonicotinoids caused migratory birds to lose significant body weight and experience disruption of their migratory timing. This causes them to miss critical breeding windows and reduces their chances of survival. 96% of North American landbirds feed insects to their chicks. A yard treated with broad-spectrum insecticides doesn't just have fewer bugs. It becomes a place where parent birds cannot raise a healthy brood. They will find somewhere else to nest, and when they do, they take with them all the generations that would have followed. Switch to targeted, bird-safe treatments where necessary, or better yet, let your birds be your pest control. A yard with a healthy bird population is a yard with balanced insect levels. That is not sentiment. That is ecology. I know you don't like bugs. Nobody does. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Without insects, there are no birds. Not fewer birds. No birds. Because baby birds eat insects, not seeds. When you spray your yard, you are not just killing mosquitoes. You are killing the food that every nesting bird needs to feed its young. So here is the better way. Stop spraying. Start attracting birds. Chickadees eat aphids by the hundreds. Bluebirds eat caterpillars. Swallows eat mosquitoes. Your birds are the best pest control you will ever have. Let them do their job. Number 9. Your feeder is the wrong type, and birds can't use it. This one surprises a lot of people, because a feeder looks fine to human eyes, but birds see things differently. Tube feeders with short perches exclude larger birds like cardinals and grosbeaks, which simply cannot balance on them. Platform feeders without drainage let seed rot within hours after a rain. Suet feeders without tail prop bars make it difficult for woodpeckers to feed comfortably, so they give up and go elsewhere. And cheap plastic feeders with sharp edges or poorly designed ports can injure birds, cutting their feet or trapping their beaks. The best feeder is one that matches the birds in your area. Cardinals need a stable platform or a hopper feeder with a wide tray. Chickadees and finches are fine with tube feeders, but the perches need to be rough enough to grip. Woodpeckers need a tail prop, and everything needs drainage, so seed stays dry. Observe what your birds are struggling with, then change one thing at a time. You'll see the difference immediately. Think of it this way. Would you try to eat dinner while balancing on a tightrope? Of course not. But that is exactly what you're asking a cardinal to do when you put sunflower seeds in a tube feeder with tiny perches. They will try. They're hungry, but they will fail, or they will struggle so much that they eventually give up and go to your neighbor's yard where the feeding is easier. Don't be the yard that makes birds work too hard for their meal. Get the right feeder. It is not expensive, and it makes all the difference. Number 10. You've never thought of yourself as someone they chose. I saved this one for last because it is not a mistake you make with your hands. It is a mistake you make in your mind. Most people who set up a feeder think of themselves as a supplier. They put out seed, birds come, transaction complete. But that is not what is happening. Birds, particularly the ones who return to the same yards season after season, are making a choice. They have dozens, sometimes hundreds, of yards in their territory. They come back to yours. Research on bird cognition, particularly studies on chickadees and corvids, shows that birds not only remember specific locations, they remember specific people. Studies at the University of Washington demonstrated that crows can recognize individual human faces, hold grudges against people who have threatened them, and pass that information to their offspring. Cardinals don't have the same facial recognition capacity as corvids, but what they have is spatial memory and a risk tolerance that builds over time with consistent, positive experience. The cardinal who comes to your feeder every morning, that specific bird, has decided you are safe. Not your yard. You. And if you stop showing up, if you let the feeder run empty for weeks, if the water goes stagnant, if the yard gets too loud and unpredictable, that trust erodes. Not dramatically, not all at once, just quietly, visit by visit, until one day the feeder is full and nobody comes. You didn't just lose a bird. You lost a relationship. You didn't know you were building. The birds that visit your yard are not random. They are the ones who looked at everything available to them and chose you. Take care of what you've been given. This is the most important thing I can tell you today. The birds in your yard are not just passing through. They are your birds. They have chosen you. They have decided, based on weeks or months of observation, that your yard is safe and your feeder is reliable. That trust is a gift, and like any gift, it can be lost. Not because you're a bad person, but because you stopped paying attention. So, pay attention. Fill the feeder, clean the water, move the feeder closer to cover, stop using pesticides. And most of all, remember, they chose you. Don't give them a reason to change their minds. If any of these hit home, and I know at least one of them did, tell me in the comments which one surprised you the most. And if you've ever had a moment where you realized a bird had been coming to your yard for longer than you thought, familiar with your face at the feeder, a song you recognized, share that too. Those moments matter more than most people realize. I'll see you in the next one.